Millennials are the new Victorians. We are entering a second Gilded Age, and I can prove it. Okay, so roughly corresponding to the reign of Queen Victoria. So that's 1837 to 1901. So before this was the Regency period. So that's women in bonnets, intense decorum, Mr. Darcy, Regency. And then there was an eensy 10-year period called the Georgian era. That's powdered wigs, men in tights. But then Victoria becomes queen right as this major shift is happening. There is a huge jump forward in technology with electricity, and with it, all of these new technological innovations. So just for example, the light bulb, the flushing toilet, the computer, such as it was, the typewriter, the lawnmower, the electric kettle, the telephone, and photography were all invented during this era. This was like a volcanic eruption that just blew the lid off everything. Huge cultural shifts were now coming from these inventions. Electricity meant people could stay up a lot later, a lot easier, and people could work at night a lot more comfortably. Home gadgets like the kettle and the vacuum freed up women from hours of domestic labor, leaving them with more time to read, visit, and conspire for their political interests. Conspire is probably not the right word there, but you know what I mean. The telephone advanced communication to being instantaneous across vast distances. So suddenly there was a lot of new work to do, installing electrical wires, taking photos, and typing. People found themselves in careers in industries their parents had never known. This photography crap, it's just a fad, it'll never last. The safety bicycle was also invented during this time, meaning people could travel farther, faster. The passenger train, that's right, that was the Victorians. In general, life sped up. You could get more done in a day, which meant eventually you were expected to get more done in a day. At first, it was pretty hard for people to adjust to all of these advancements. For example, a lot of older people thought that indoor electricity was unpleasantly bright and were worried that it was dangerous, which it totally was, and a lot of people died before we figured out how to ground live wires. But people also worried about silly things that, like, bicycles could damage women's internal organs because we still thought that they floated freely around in their bodies. Toilets were also, like, exploding left and right. Thank God for Thomas Crapper. Didn't stop companies from selling them, though. And suddenly, there were a lot of new questions. Like, if you hooked up the electricity for your house to a public street lamp, is that like stealing? Remember, a lot of these industries were so new that they were very loosely regulated, if they were regulated at all. So we're talking cocaine in drinks, laudanum in medicine for kids, morphine for stress, and if you ended up addicted to coke from your local apothecary, oops. So like all this booming industry was fast, it was loose, and completely unregulated at first, which meant people who got in on the ground floor made a lot of money, and the Victorians saw the rise of industry tycoons like Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and Cornelius Vanderbilt. People were getting insanely rich, like rich on levels working class people had never even seen before, and living lives of such excess and luxury most people couldn't even imagine it. For reference, in 1880, a loaf of bread cost 1 penny. So to a shoemaker, like, what is $1 million? How does one make 100 million pennies? What would you even do with it? And this wealth disparity did not go unnoticed. People were really critical of these tycoons, calling them robber barons in the press, which is a term we really need to bring back. With all this industry and all this money being made, we still didn't have much in the way of workers' protections or labor rights, so we were sending 6-year-old kids down mines and making them push their little fingies into complex machinery because they could reach better. And yes, children did die. A lot. You could pay someone whatever you thought was fair, or whatever you thought they'd take. I guess it really depends on how hungry they were. Some companies were paying people in company brand monopoly money that you could only spend at their own branded stores. So it was like working at Walmart and then being paid in Walmart bucks. Do you guys like me talking about history? Because do you want me to tell you about the Pinkertons? Because I will tell you about the Pinkertons. It was a really great time to be one of the very few millionaires reaping nearly all the benefits of these incredible new industries, and a really bad time to be a working class person. People struggled to get by on wages that just weren't enough. And for what? So much money was being made, and yet it wasn't being shared. The main theme of this era were major disparities between the rich and the poor, and that's why it's called the Gilded Age. When something is gilded, it's not golden, it's gold-plated. The term was coined by Mark Twain, actually, describing the era as glittering on the surface but corrupt underneath. People were dazzled by this incredible new way of life that had been laid out in front of them. But the truth was that this dazzling facade was being built brick by glittering brick on the backs of workers who were poor, sick, and had very few rights. And making changes to that system was really difficult because there was a lot of political corruption. And at this point, you're probably seeing what I mean when I say millennials are the new Victorians. We were also a generation that experienced a huge boom in technology. Where Victorians had electricity, we had the internet. And it also changed everything. Suddenly, you could order a pizza without even ever speaking to a single person. You could look up the answers to your homework without opening a textbook. And we all had friends around the world who we'd never actually met in real life. And suddenly, there were a lot of new questions. If you download a song from a stranger who shared it on the internet, is that stealing? If you work for DoorDash, are you an independent contractor? Many of us find ourselves working in industries our parents have never known. You can now pay for things online, really easy with services like PayPal, and eventually you didn't even need to use your computer anymore. You could do it from your phone. Both inventions ending up making people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos a lot of money, like more money than most working class people can even really imagine. Like, what is $1 billion? What would you even do with it? Speaking of people who don't make enough money, I would just like to take a moment out of the video to mention that I am a poor person. I am a single mom. I do live in low-income housing, and I do have a Patreon that helps me make these videos. You can subscribe and check out the content there. I also have been making little computer games recently for people's enjoyment. And I hope you can't hear my neighbors. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month, and it really helps me. If every single person who subscribed to my channel donated $1 a month, it would basically change my life. So I hope that I will see you over there. And anyway, okay, that's it. Back to the video. The internet quickly became a huge marketplace where people launched new products constantly, a lot of the times before we even really figured out if they were safe or not. So if you ended up with a nicotine addiction from the vape you bought at your local smoke shop, oops, making money is now easier than ever. Even kids can work as influencers. Is it bad for them? I mean, only psychologically, probably. Millennials are living in a world that has sped up exponentially since we were kids, and a lot of older people have really struggled to acclimate to how fast things have changed. We live in this dazzling world of technology, like with driverless cars and any food you could imagine delivered to your door and robots that sweep our floor. It's tricky because on the surface, everything looks pretty golden, but the truth is that all of that dazzling innovation is being built brick by glittering brick on the backs of a working class who are struggling to get by on wages that just aren't enough. And for what? So much money is being made, and yet it isn't being shared. So, now that I have made my case, how did this turn out for the Victorians? I mean, not great. It took a pretty serious working class revolution to wrench control back from the Bezoses and Musks of their day, and they did not go down without a fight. The populist movement, as it was later called, was led mostly by farmers, but a lot of today's farmers would consider a populist movement some sort of communist skullduggery. I could see it being led by baristas, though. Grounds for change, the People's Brew, the pour-over party. So in this Gilded Age, when people tried to strike for better working conditions, the government often stepped in support of big business. They sent federal troops to break up strikes like the railroad strike of 1877 and the Pullman strike of 1894. Like, people knew the government did not have their back and were more than happy to lick corporate boot. I wonder what our current administration would have done in their position. I can't imagine. Things got really bad. Like, really bad. There were labor strikes often turned extremely violent. There were bombings. Women were still fighting for the right to vote and really not getting anywhere for a long time. Remember, this was before the internet, and it was hard to get your message out. A huge turning point for a lot of people was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire of 1911. A shirtwaist is a kind of shirt we don't wear anymore. Don't worry about it. Fires were not uncommon at this time. A lot of wood, a lot of hay for horses, and There were no sprinkler systems or fire extinguishers. Despite this, it had become a common practice to lock workers in to prevent unauthorized breaks and theft. I would ask you to imagine like how callous you have to be to lock your employees in just to stop them from taking breaks. But anyone who's ever worked retail doesn't need to be convinced. If they could get away with it in 2025, they would. A fire broke out in the factory while mostly young women were still locked inside, and 146 people burned to death. It was ghastly and all over the newspapers. Like, it really highlighted for a lot of people the disgusting levels of greed and just the lack of basic human decency that had become so normal for workers. And the government still fought us. They were still licking corporate boot. Maybe if we give the fires clear backpacks, we'll know which fires are bad fires. So this tragedy led to the creation of the New York Factory Investigating Commission and eventually a long line of boards and organizations that brought us to OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which, wouldn't you know it, our current administration is trying to get rid of. Isn't that interesting? There are those in 2025 who think if we can just recreate the conditions of the Gilded Age, the environment that brought us the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts of the world, that things would be better for them. You see it in a lot of policy aimed at making it easier for businesses to succeed. Don't you like money? Don't you wish these annoying pencil pushers from OSHA would just get off your back? Don't you wish these bleeding heart tryhards like PBS would stop telling your kids unions are good? You could be the next billionaire. I mean, it probably won't be you. It's more likely to be them, but just in case, shouldn't we try? It's ridiculous. Oh my God. It's important to remember that during the Gilded Age, while people were fighting for change, a lot of strikes failed. A lot of unions failed. People tried things, and it didn't work for years until eventually it did. So keep trying.